What's up, people? It's X, and I just read the Chainsaw Man Part 2, Chapter 232, and here's exactly how I feel about it.
Like, hell no!
And this is also me going to be re-ranting about Denji's character a bit too while you're at it. Is that Chainsaw Man Part 2, oh boy, where do I even start? Denji's characterization, oh man. Not even that, but I'm going to get into that in a second. However, Chainsaw Man Part 2 went to complete and utteral dog shit so bad, I would even dare say his ending's worse than Oshinoko's. Because at least it doesn't affect the beginning of the whole entire premise, but Chainsaw Man Part 2's ending affects everything, because given it's an alternate timeline, Denji, now he's back to square one, and it's a totally different thing. And I find it so funny how convenient it is he has power appear out of nowhere. I'm telling you, with the way Fujimoto wrote this chapter, it's like he just said, fuck it, I'm just gonna put everything in there. I don't even care if it makes sense. And he did exactly that. He made sure it didn't make sense. Because Power, if you remember back in part one, she wasn't nowhere even near Denji around that time. As a matter of fact, oh boy, I know some of you guys, but at the same time, I'm just gonna be spitting facts. I'm not making this shit up. I am speaking facts. Hell, they even showed in the anime is that Power in the beginning. The only reason why they became best buds in the first place is because Denji indirectly saved her cat, Meowie. Not even because he was just doing it. It was just a random situation. Because you have to remember, she was willing to sell Denji to that man or Bad Devil, whatever, to get her cat back, and that just indirectly happened, and that's why they became buddies in the first place. But here, since that never happened, and I'm just going to say it's logically speaking, here, because that never happened, and even though he just randomly threw power in there, he wouldn't even know it don't really make sense in that context, but whatever. Even though he threw power in there, here's the thing. Power is a blood devil, obviously, right? She she preys on whatever she feels that she to devour for blood because she needs that to survive. Denji in this scenario, given that he never met Power, they don't know each other, he's just a random ass dude, and logically speaking, Denji would just be food to her. But however, since Fujimoto clearly doesn't give a shit about consistency, he just has her do the exact same shit that, okay, should I say a very similar shit way with Mike talking about she makes a deal with him for some stupid reason, but whatever. She just jumps right in. I should probably be showing that, but that's besides the point. Either way, I just have to make this rant real quick. And I'll probably do another thing about the vid on that. But anyway, point is, Power basically, she takes out the zombie devil. This is, I'm sorry, I need to point this out. This is some bullshit. Because the zombie devil, it's funny how he conveniently just brings Power in out of nowhere. And I'm like, she wasn't even in this part. Wow, this dude just loves to screw up shit. She takes them out, yelling blood or whatever. She makes a deal with him, and he takes her blood or whatever. And it's just he's literally her dog. How much he likes dogs. He smells like a dog. It's like, what the fuck? Like, bro, what the fuck did he just do to Power? This shit don't even make any sense. I know people have been wanting to see Power back and all, but this is probably had to be the worst way to do it, even for fans. Like, it's literally just fan service. There's no logic behind it. Power in this scenario serves no narrative purpose whatsoever. She's just there for fan service. Now, with that being said, since Bushido ate himself, don't ask me how that works, and now in this different timeline, you would think that Makima will be back in the picture, right? Well, guess what? That's not the case, even though that also don't make any damn sense, because if Bushido didn't exist, that means that she didn't need her, which also means that, she don't get, erased. So with Naota still being here, like, this is what I'm talking about. Fujimoto just don't give a shit. That's how you know Fujimoto just don't give a shit. He just threw the shit together, said, well, here you go. And I'm like, wow, what a piece of crap. I'm definitely going to make a meme of that later. And not only that, oh, man. I would show those chapters, but I'm just like, what the fuck, man? Anyway, with that being said, yeah, like, I'm gonna have to get into more of that later, because and then on top of that, they have the child, the reincarnation, which doesn't make sense for being reincarnation of Makima at this point, running the public safety. That, like, what is Fujimoto smoking? Like, dude, seriously, that shit don't make no damn sense. You literally gonna, I don't even know what to even say. Fujimoto, what the fuck, dude? And then if that's not enough, we literally see a part where basically now apparently Denji. I mean, even though the relationship dynamic isn't the same like before, but that's besides the point. Denji basically goes forward to walking with power, and then she asks him what weapon he wants, and he says a chainsaw. Even though I swear, this has to. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I'm just gonna say this right now. This has to be the worst way for a manga writer or author to ruin his own premise in the most worst possible way. Like I said, this is even worse than Ushinoko shit. Because again, in some other shit I can think of, it's like lately now, it's like the Olympics of who can be the worst rider with the worst ending. And apparently, Fujimoto wants to be number one. Apparently, because with the way he did this shit, now part one basically is meaningless. Part two is meaningless, and now we're in this bullshit. And then this shit do put an end, which is just the shittiest ending. Imagine if this was a scene in the movie. That would have been the most utter dog shit. I mean, still it's an utter dog shit anyway, but it's just on screen. It'll just be even worse because of the reaction to that. It wouldn't make no damn sense. I mean, it still don't make no damn sense. And then it's just kind of like, what was that? What did I just watch? In this case, what the fuck did I just read? The situation makes zero fucking sense. I mean, I'll point out where Chainsaw Man Part 2 started fucking up anyway. Because it's clear to me that Fujimoto had no direction for it, so we made Part 2. It was just some bullshit. When we entered the Chainsaw Man church arc, after that, it lost the plot. We went back to focusing on Denji, even though we first started out with Asa. It didn't make no damn sense. And then he made Yoru the main antagonist for some reason, even though in the context of it, that wasn't really that direction. And then, I don't know, he just started rehashing shit he did before. And then we go to this situation, and then Bushido eats himself, and then now Denji's back to the situation of just being homeless and doing the same shit. It's like, what was even the point then? He literally made his own premise meaningless by doing that shit. He made his own premise meaningless. He had a good premise. And I'll say this is one of those mangas where it could have been expanded more. Definitely could have been expanded more. It's not one of those stories where it's just a done deal. But nope, Fujimoto had other plans. He decided, let me sabotage that shit that I made that was actually good. I swear, and sure enough, he fucked up in the most worst possible way. It's no wonder why this shit started getting less views over time. I'm not even surprised. And another thing I want to point out is that some people, as said, at least I'm saying on YouTube, some people keep saying that Fujimoto's a good writer. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going to disagree with that. Like, he has good ideas, but he's not a good writer, and I say that given how Part 2 is. He's good at making one-hit wonders, but he sucks at, like, giving a direction. He has no direction for it. I almost feel like Part 1 was on accident, and after that, he just didn't know what the fuck to do with it afterwards. Like I said, he's good at making one-hit wonders, but he sure as hell sucks at, like, expanding on shit. He has ideas, but he doesn't flesh them out right. And that's essentially what I would say that's the problem. Like I said. So, basically, chapter 232. Oh, man. I still can't believe they did that shit to Denji. And then, not to mention, we see, and that's another thing too. Some people keep talking about Asa as a conclusion. What conclusion does she have exactly? Because there's nothing that really brings about any kind of end for her character. And then it literally just ends with a panel of Powers Bud and shit. And I'm like, what the fuck was that? This shit was so short. I mean, this has to be the worst ending I've seen in a while. The ending doesn't even make sense. The ending does not even make sense. I'm gonna have to make a video on why all this shit. Man, I might have to cover some of that shit. No, a lot of shit. And with that in mind, I might as well do this other rant. It's gonna be about Denji, and this is just gonna be me basically also pointing out the facts and the fandom that they completely ignore about Denji's character. I'm gonna make this real quick. I hope I can make it quick anyway. All right, I'll just say this. I know a lot of people will be like, "Oh, Denji, he wants that family. Oh, Denji wants this. Oh, Denji, he suffered a lot." I mean, it's true, he has suffered a lot. I'm not denying that. But here's the problem: Denji doesn't really care too much about a family. And I'm gonna say this right now: this dude does not give a fuck about that. He only cares about titties and sex. That's literally it. As far as that goes, it doesn't even help in part two. He's even more open about having sex, and he makes it very clear that's the one thing he's after. But people think he wants a family, or whatever. Like, no, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna get into this too. And of course, I know some of you guys are gonna get at me for this, but I'm just pointing out some shit that's actually true in this shit. A lot of people keep talking about how Makima didn't give a shit about Denji. That is true. However, Denji didn't give a shit about Makima. And I'm gonna get into that why, because it's pretty common for people to just, and I notice that this is never brought up in any discussion ever, except for the post I made on Quora, where people don't acknowledge the other side of Denji's behavior that's also negative, mostly negative and positive though, is that Denji, okay, I'm gonna use this analogy because it fits. What's his name? Hal from Megamind, the Megamind movie. He was using Roxanne, but it wasn't like he was naively opportunistic the way he was using Roxanne. And I'm gonna get into why that comparison makes sense here, and why it makes sense with Denji's is that even in the movie in Megamind, I'm gonna make this short about Megamind. They even established that all of Hal's life he sucked at everything, and even when he tried. So when he got that job with Roxanne as a cameraman, he was seeking her approval of being successful at something. And he was so desperate for it that he was willing to do whatever. He even started, like I said, he just was using Roxanne to fill in that void. That was symbolic. Now, with that being said, people attack Hal for using Roxanne, even though he didn't mean to, even though it was subconsciously, not on purpose. He unconsciously was using Roxanne because he was so desperate. And then, things went downhill from there. Because he liked Roxanne. He just liked the idea of Roxanne, but he didn't like Roxanne and didn't know more about her. Now, with that being said, same thing with Denji. Denji only liked the idea of Makima. He didn't actually care about Makima as a person. That's one thing that everybody always gets wrong about Denji. Denji never truly cared about Makima. He only cared about what she represented to him, and that was literally it. Food, shelter, whatever you could exploit out of it. If the moment, and listen carefully, guys, if the moment Denji would have stopped, if the moment Makima would have stopped offering Denji the things he wanted, he would have stopped dealing with her altogether. And that's the truth. That's the truth of it. Denji only liked Makima because what she offered to him, not because he actually cared. So now it kind of shows that situation where people keep trying to make it out to be like, oh, Makima didn't give a shit about Denji. Yeah, but Denji didn't give a shit about Makima. Because I'm going to point this out right now. This made up, this biased character thing that people make about Denji. It's like, Denji, too, is naively opportunistic. He only thought about Makima when it benefited him. He didn't think about her, and I even made a post about it. I may or may not post it here on the description, but that's besides the point. Like I said, Denji was just using Makima. He was even using her, you know what? He was even using her for material gain because he was using her in a place to stay. That's material gain. And like I said, he was just only in that relationship because of what he could get. Like I said, people try to make it seem like Denji's sympathetic or whatever, but really and truly, it's just Denji going with convenience that situation. Even if part of him does somewhat care, his care comes second, his self-interest comes first. I've even done a video with another guy named Gaming Fan, by the way, where we both went about how Denji's just a bad anti-hero, and no one really talks about that except for me and him, sadly. Denji literally uses people and will dish them the moment they don't offer, because hell, even in the anime, well, not just the anime, the manga, you literally see him having a crush on Makima, then he immediately jumped to the next woman. Just right in there, even though he just met Makima. That situation shows more than anything like he literally jumped to the next one just that fast. That just shows that he's just only after for whatever it is he thinks he can get out of them. Hell, Denji takes people for granted, and then he takes advantage of them. He don't value the person that he's with. It's funny too because in recent videos people keep talking about how he just wants more and more. Yeah, like I said, it's like he takes advantage of people and then he takes them for granted. And I hate to say this right now, and I know a lot of you people are going to be like, but that's just your emotional bias talking. I'm going to say this right now. I hate to burst your bubble. I hate to be that guy, but I might as well say it. I might as well say it. Denji would have been a bad boyfriend for Rize. I'm sorry. He would have been a bad boyfriend for Rize. Because Denji, even with Rize really surely, he was just using her because she was a perfect escape from Makima stuff. He was just using her, even if someone cared about her, his care came second, someone just came first. He just liked what Rize represented to him, escapism from the situation he was in with Makima. Like, again, the moment another girl would offer a better deal than Rize, or the moment Rize stopped offering that, he would stop fooling over. Excuse me. God damn it, keep coughing. And I'm not wrong when I say that shit. Like I said, look, they pay attention to all Denji's behavior, where the only thing he does is want to get laid. Even part two, he even says, he makes it very clear that he just want to get laid. That's all he wants. He doesn't want anything else. Which is kind of stupid in part two, because Fujimoto tried to establish some stupid connection with him and Asa, even though they hardly even interact with each other the entire time, because he forgot Asa existed, and he was just thinking about sex. Even with that, because I mean, as a matter of fact, and if any of you trying to come at me about Denji's characterization, name me one moment where Denji decided that he wanted to show that he gives a shit about somebody, or one moment that he decided that he put someone else's needs before his, because he wants to see, them actually get attentiveness from him or something like that. Like him actually being selfless, not selfish. Because Denji's anything but altruistic, right? This turned for me to ranting, but I might as well point it out because, I mean, hell, people keep never bring this up in the conversation. Denji's not altruistic. Like, hell, I'm gonna say this right now too. I know some people are gonna come at me for this, but I'm gonna point out, I'm gonna spit facts. Denji, literally, like his whole like the reason why he got me played by Monica in the first place. I'm not denying it. She did abuse. I'm not denying that. But Denji's victimhood, as we put it, it wasn't because he was being altruistic either. It's because he was being opportunistic. Because, like I said, he was being used because, he was trying to exploit something out of her. And it was a transactional relationship. Even though people keep treating it like he gave a fuck, but he didn't give a fuck at all. He was taking her for granted too and taking advantage of her. Because, like I said, the moment that one person would stop giving him shit that he wants, then he would just quit fooling with him altogether. And people completely ignore that fact and act like Denji's such an angel, and he's far from it. And yes, I know people focus on his upbringing or whatever, about how he suffered or whatever, but at the same time, his victimhood, like, I'll just say this right now, victimhood does not equate to being morally right. Because I'm going to use this example right now. Catra from the She-Ra reboot, she's a victim of Shadow Weaver's abuse, but her actions aren't the right. She uses people just like Shadow Weaver uses people. Then he does the same shit. He uses people, even if it's not intentional. He's still using people, and that's one thing people completely ignore about Denji. And like I said, this is never brought in a conversation in any discussion whatsoever, because people completely ignore Denji altogether about his bad side of the shit that he does. Man, this turns to a rant, but it's a rant. But yeah, like I said, it's like, it's ridiculous that people completely ignore that fact, and it's just like, that shit don't make sense to me. Like I said, Hal gets blamed for using Roxanne, even if it wasn't on purpose, but yeah, Denji gets a pass. Narrative bias, I suppose. Narrative bias. And like I said, Denji, and I would even argue he's even worse than Hal, because he's done this with more than one female. He's just like what they represent to him. He doesn't actually give a shit about them, personally speaking. Like I said, it's given his opportunistic behavior that people completely ignore and act like he's altruistic or something. Like, when in reality, he's just a really bad anti-hero. I'm just saying that. Because, like I said, he's with people because of what they represent to him. He's just, to make himself feel better. Otherwise, the moment he stopped giving him what he wants, he would just stop fooling with him. Like I say, he's just completely opportunistic. Even if it's just survival, like, he still do something bad. So I'm not going to try to make it sound good that he's doing something bad. And like I said, that's one thing in the fandom that people completely ignore about Denji, is that he's not in the right in any sort of way of the word. And even though they try to act like he is, even as much as people want to just keep attacking Makima in every single way, even if it doesn't even fit the context of it, Denji was literally using her too. That's how he was being used. So it's not really all that sympathetic. I really should say this for a different video, but it's really not all that sympathetic. He's just being a hypocrite, Like I said, his victimhood is more like Castra's, in that you're using people too. So, because like I said, Denji was just taking advantage of her, taking her for granted, and people act like he was giving a shit when he really fucking wasn't. Denji's an opportunist. Even if it's not on purpose, yet he's still being opportunist. And I hate to, no, actually, I don't hate to because I'm just pointing out the truth. I'm not making up shit. But at the same time, like I said, it's just people back like Denji is like, you know, not only thinking of himself, but he is only thinking of himself. Like I said, his anti-heroism stems from his self-interest. And not only that, like I said, Denji's so fucking horny that he would definitely a girl for sex if he could have. But then, let me not get my video flagged. But point is that Denji's not exactly right. But Denji's not even morally good. He's morally neutral at best. And people just, I don't know, it's a fandom. But anyway, yeah, about enough of that rant for now. Thing is that Chainsaw Man Part Two, it was total dog shit. The ending was dog shit. It didn't even make any fucking sense. Nothing about it made sense, honestly. It was just rushed and it was just fan service for the sake of fan service. It served no narrative purpose. It was just throw some shit together, say, well, here's your ending, here you go, even if it don't make sense. Because Fujimoto does shit like that, apparently. He just put that shit together, even if it didn't add up. He didn't give a shit about that part. He just threw some things together, act like it was okay. Now because he did that, he basically made his whole entire manga basically meaningless. And then he act like he did something right when he clearly fucking didn't, or whatever. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how true this is, but some people say he's a big fan of Big Lebowski thing, where the ending don't make sense. So he decided to do that shit. If that's true, then that was just a dumb move. Now he just ruined his own fucking manga for that shit. But whatever. Now I just don't know what to say about Fujimoto. Or he playing games now or something. I remember an old saying of another YouTuber when Oda was taking too long on a chapter, telling me to whoop Oda's ass. Maybe I should whoop Fujimoto's ass. I don't know. So, with that being said, yeah, Chainsaw Man Part 2, utteral dog shit. So, with that being said, sadly, like, subscribe, and sorry for this long ass video, and see you guys later. Peace.